Right, so proportional representation. It's getting a little bit of attention in the news at the moment, isn't it? There's a bit of attention being paid to it. A new way of counting votes. Well, not so much a new way of counting votes, but another way of counting votes rather than the first past the post system where the winner takes it all. And we, as a consequence, end up in a perpetual loop of Tory or Labour governments, nobody else ever being able to get a look in. And within my own lifetime, certainly, that has meant nothing changes in the grand scheme of things. It doesn't matter who's in charge, nothing actually gets run any differently. The country ends up instead running the interests of the few and not the many. And people enter politics not to change the country and improve lives, but to benefit themselves by gaining the favour of those with an interest in maintaining things just as they are. It suits them. That'll be the rich, of course, getting even richer, if that wasn't already obvious, as they've done throughout the austerity years, throughout the pandemic, and during this current cost of living crisis. They keep on getting wealthier as the rest of us keep getting more and more hard up. That'll be the billionaire press barons as well. Let's not forget them, not only cashing in by getting wealthier themselves, but setting the narrative to ensure that keeps on carrying on too, telling us the guff they're emitting is actually news when really it is propaganda to keep on convincing us to keep on voting against our interests and in theirs. Now, the Tories have always been the establishment party, the party pushing that line and promoting their interests, yet it cannot be ignored that Thatcher's self-confessed greatest achievement, Tony Blair, absolutely was too. And Keir Starmer, being the heir to Blair, if you like, that he likes to think that he is, also lying about his true motivations until it's too late, they've been voted in. And when at that point the only opposition capable of getting them out is the Tories again, well, it becomes a rather depressing spectacle, doesn't it? Promoting voter apathy en masse as things seem to get more and more hopeless. For 80 odd years now, this has been how things are. The two-party system. Proportional representation, however, would shake that up a little bit. No more would it be the case of whoever got the most votes in a given seat wins it. No more would that often mean seats going to people winning less than 50% of the actual vote, and candidates would actually have to lay down popular policies in order to win, because the seat would be decided by more votes counting for something, and indeed frees people up to vote for who they want to, rather than feeling they have to vote for who they have to, whoever seems the least worst option. And whatever that proportional representation looks like, because there are different kinds, one person who let themselves appear to be backing this change, of course, of how our votes are counted, who claimed to be against the establishment, was indeed that aforementioned Labour leader, Keir Starmer, who, but as we all know by now, what he says 1 minute isn't necessarily something he'll keep his word on 10 minutes later. Not only that, though, but Labour's conference last year, Labour's sovereign decision-making body, voted to make proportional representation Labour policy. Keir Starmer is the first Labour leader going to basically dismiss the will of his own Labour membership, the will of the ordinary working class as that party is meant to represent. They don't matter to him. Starmer's dishonesty is only exceeded by his own arrogance, his hunger for power driving him to say whatever he thinks will win him support at any given time, even if he has no intention of keeping any promise he makes going forward, and later dumping on people from a great height, foolish enough to keep trusting him. He allowed people to assume he backed proportional representation. He didn't deny the issue. And now he has become emboldened enough to out and out say that, in fact, he does not support proportional representation. It's not just ordinary Labour members he's ignoring and clashing with over this, though. It's not just apathetic, despairing members of the public who back PR2 that Starmer is ignoring. The trade unions themselves back PR, a majority of them, in fact, 2/3 of which back proportional representation, including Labour's two biggest donors in Unison and Unite. And now even the arguably most right-wing of Labour's affiliated trade unions, USDAW, have come out in support of PR. They can all smell the coffee. They only exist themselves, the trade unions, to represent their members, and they know this charade of misrepresentation, of functionally undemocratic lack of representation, will only harm workers' rights going forwards. It's no longer a left or right issue with them. It's a right or wrong issue. Now, Starmer has been dropped in it after a spokesperson dropped the truth nugget that Starmer is apparently a long-standing view against proportional representation. Well, oh, really? That's news to an awful lot of people, isn't it? There's two more comments made that the spokesman also confirmed, which has placed supporters of Team Keith and his critics at loggerheads, though. The spokesperson went on to say that Starmer is not looking to change the electoral system. It's not something that is a priority for him. And also, when asked to clarify whether the former point Starmer had made about a long-standing view against proportional representation meant that Starmer was actually against PR, the spokesperson simply replied, Yes. So we have a situation here, certainly from my perspective, of another example of Starmer having lied to get support for something he knows is popular, but doesn't actually believe in and won't ever deliver because of that. And finally, he's admitted as much. For anyone not yet put off by the fact Starmer lies like a Boris Johnson tribute act, that the only difference between him and Johnson is Brill cream and a comb, this is another example of him doing something to make you think twice. Still, there are people there who will defend him, though. Oh, it's just not a priority for him, some have said, completely ignoring the other things he's been put on record as saying by his own spokesperson. If you're arguing that it's not a priority for him now, but it might be later, you've missed the bit about him having a long-standing opposition to PR. What's going to change then? Starmer is ignoring his members again. They want PR. No doubt if you don't like that, he'll point you towards the door like he has so many others. But he's also functionally pointing the finger at the door to his party's trade union backers, financiers, even as party finances remain tight. And he can't really afford to lose more money, despite donors having come back to Labour. Labour had donors before, under Blair, of course. But Blair also racked up megatons of debt as a result of becoming reliant on those, more typically the funders of the Tories. So you can only expect the party finances to get worse. Starmer won't get away with this, won't get away with the kind of things Blair did, because these days there is social media. These days people can access a wealth of different sources of news and opinion. There are people like me, complete mouthpieces, people who are not reliant functionally on those same press barons that get us voting to cut our own noses off to spite our faces, as they once were during the 90s and early noughties, during that Blair heyday. That con has been played and those days are over. The only card right-wing politicians leading functionally right-wing parties have anymore is to force us to choose between them, regardless of what we know, force us to pick blue Tory or red Tory, as the choice before us now is, virtually impossible to break through for other parties because people insist on voting tactically, feeling they have to vote for that least worst option, rather than who they might actually really want. First past the post cannot therefore be considered even to be democratic, when fully almost a third of all votes cast in the last general election, 32% of them, that's some 23 million votes, counted for absolutely nothing. Every vote should count, has to count, otherwise we're just only taking part in a system already rigged against us before we've even got to the ballot box. Why should we take part in that farce? That's the argument of the non-voter, and there's no good answer to them for that under this system. Starmer claims to be against sticking plaster politics. He says it repeatedly now. At least he shut up a bit about being a toolmaker's son. Somebody's clearly changed the message behind his Toy Story style pull string. My only issue with that comparison is that Woody is more lifelike. But anyway, sticking plaster politics, he keeps saying it. If keeping the electoral system as it is isn't just equivalent to applying another strip of elastoplast, I don't know what is. The argument for PR is that it produces stable government, single party majorities, and all of that. There's nothing stable in decimating the country for most of us, however, by handing the reins to one of two parties most people don't like. Besides which, PR is used in so many other countries where coalitions have become the norm, and where negotiation to bring about policy positions between parties has to take place before it's implemented. That can only bring in an additional level of scrutiny in dictating what is and isn't the right things to do for a country. Politicians backing keeping things as they are, the Tories, Starmer, are the sort who think they can achieve power on their own as a result, and aren't thinking of the country in doing so, simply their own ambitions and their own ends. There's definitely debates to be had over what form of PR should be adopted by the UK, but there should be no argument that some form of it is needed, because first past the post does not deliver democratic results. And in fact, the results of general elections and local elections are becoming ever more undemocratic as more and more people don't take part in them. All first past the post does is not encourage people to vote. It actively discourages it. Starmer is wrong, and his party, Labour members, trade union affiliates, need to do something about him over this. PR, aside from anything else, would dump the Tories out of power probably forever. And whoever introduced it would have the support of a great many people. So why wouldn't an opposition leader want that? Simple. Starmer doesn't want to represent us. He wants to represent them. He just wants his turn in power. The establishment to just give him the nod. He's just another empty suit, another forgettable politician serving themselves. As for those making excuses for Starmer, just pack it in. You're out of step. clearly with the needs of ordinary working class people the country over by ignoring society's needs, which won't be met by politicians choosing to hang on to archaic, failing methodology. And at the end of the day, you're getting people's backs up by siding with your team instead of your country, as is blatantly the case if you're backing the disenfranchisement of millions of voters and their votes to continue. You're pissing in the wind and we're all getting splashed. Give yourself a good shake and get with it. We need a change here. Starmer will not provide it. Thanks for watching. If you appreciated this video, please do hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment and hit the notification bell too so you don't miss the next one. Also, look out for me on social media and other interesting stuff by clicking on the Linktree link in the comments below. And I will see you next time. Cheers, folks.